There remains no sign of Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370, nor its passengers and crew. A 6-hour flight has become 4 days of questions and theories of anger and grief. Yet we are still no closer to understanding what made the plane disappear without trace. No mayday, no wreckage, no answers. And despite some hoping for a miracle, little chance of anything other than the worst-case scenario being confirmed. The arrivals board in Beijing simply said that flight MH370 was delayed. The truth was, it had vanished.
We are deeply saddened this morning with the news on MH370. Malaysia Airlines confirmed that this flight, MH370, lost contact with Subang Air Traffic Control at 2:40 a.m. this morning.
As news of the plane's disappearance spread, the families and friends of those on board began to gather.
Some people are crying, some are checking information on their mobile phones. There is nothing in the rooms except for some water, biscuits and bread. There is nothing else.
We are looking at all possibilities, but it's too early to make any conclusive remarks. I'd just like to say that our thoughts and prayers are with the bereaved families affected.
A coordinated multinational search and rescue operation began immediately.
We're working very closely with our neighbours, especially with China, Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, where we have requested assistance, first on information of whereabouts the planes may be, and secondly, if there is a need for search and rescue, which we cannot cope.
The Chinese immediately tightened security at their airports as it became apparent the passenger list for the flight had two anomalies, an Austrian called Christian Kozel and Luigi Maraldi, an Italian, but neither man was on board. Both had had their passports stolen in Thailand.
When we checked on it in our system, it came back that this is a stolen passport. So we contacted the person to who the passport belonged. This is a person living in Austria. He's safe and sound. Police talked to him. He confirmed the story that, yes, indeed, 2 years ago, 2012, on a trip in Thailand, his passport was stolen.
From figures emerging recently, issued by Interpol and others, it seems that 1 billion people travel each year on stolen passports, which is an astounding figure. Of these, we don't know how many could be used for terrorism purposes, because also criminal purposes such as human trafficking, drug smuggling, refugees fleeing their countries, etc., etc.
Malaysia Airlines has 15 Boeing 777-200 jets in its fleet. It's one of the safest aircraft in aviation history, capable of flying extremely long distances thanks to two giant engines. Even if one fails, it simply shouldn't fall out of the sky. More than 1,000 have been manufactured, with just 60 mainly minor incidents logged. The first fatal crash in its 19-year history only came in July 2013, when an Asiana Airlines jet landed short of the runway in San Francisco. The Boeing 777 aircraft took off from Kuala Lumpur on Friday evening UK time. It was due to land in Beijing around 6 hours later, following a route that took it along Vietnam's east coast. However, around 2 hours into the flight, contact with air traffic control was lost near Vietnam's To Chu Islands. It was there that the search was initially focused. Still, so much hope that passengers and crew could be found. More than 20 aircraft and 40 ships scoured the ocean, focusing on an oil slick seen between Malaysia and Vietnam, later proved to be unconnected. At Beijing Airport, the lack of available information began to take its toll. You wouldn't do this if you had family on board, said this relative. This man's grandparents were on board the flight from Kuala Lumpur. I've been waiting more than 20 hours for a snippet of news, he said. Our families are on this plane and they don't give us a single answer. They simply let us wait. So too in Australia, Danica weeks on tenterhooks for any news of her missing husband Paul.
And I've got a 3-year-old who's asking, when's Daddy going to Skype? And he's got a map on his wall where Daddy plotted where his Dad's going to be, and so he looks around and he says, "When's Dad going to Skype? Will Daddy be there? When will he Skype?" So luckily he's with friends at the moment, but I will cross that bridge when I have to cross that bridge if I have to.
The priority for any airline in an incident such as this is to care for the families of those affected, not just of the passengers, but also of the crew. And in the absence of facts, it's very hard for the airline to give out anything other than what it really knows.
In truth, the search operation was clutching at straws. This debris, spotted by the crew of a Vietnamese Navy plane, was initially thought to be an interior door. Instead, another false lead.
We confirm that our search now has been extended to even wider areas, because there is the possibility, we're looking at the possibility of an aircraft air turnback, in which case different locations will have to be identified.
So the search in the vast Gulf of Thailand and in the South China Sea were extended to an area covering hundreds of square miles. The authorities then decided to look elsewhere. There was the suggestion the aircraft might have turned around, so they began to search the other side of the peninsula and on land on the peninsula itself. 48 hours on, with hope dwindling, still no concrete leads as to where the 777 might be. And so, with hopes fading, the search intensified, with more than 30 aircraft and 40 ships now involved. The Philippines Navy joined the efforts. Aircraft from Australia headed to the sea between Malaysia and Thailand. Once more, relatives of the missing passengers were told there was nothing to report.
The Honourable Prime Minister used the word perplexing. We are equally puzzled as well.
And yet, there were theories in abundance. These were the only suspect tickets issued. The booking for Luigi Maraldi and Christian Kozel paid for in Thai currency, but neither was on board. The passengers in their place were booked to go from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing and then on to Amsterdam.
Do they look Italian and German?
I think this is a security matter. Let the authorities investigate the claims, and also let them come up with a report.
Kuala Lumpur Airport prides itself on its passenger experience, but it's the airlines that make initial passport checks. Foul play still could not be ruled out.
If it is terrorism, and we don't know at all that it is yet, but if it is, it's going to be a real wake-up call to a region that thought that was other people's problem, not theirs.
Pilot error remained another option, yet no one could explain why there was no mayday signal, no urgent request for assistance, why no debris, why the complete loss of contact with air traffic control.
It can happen because pilots are taught to prioritise their tasks, to aviate first, then to navigate, and then to communicate. So if pilots are busy, they won't speak to air traffic control.
So difficult is it to accept that a plane can simply disappear that some have chosen not to.
Until there's proof that Philip is dead, I refuse to believe it. Of anybody that could survive something like this, it's him. I mean, he's such a fighter, and he has so much to live for.
Commercial flights continued above the Malay Peninsula as the search area was expanded further beyond the projected path of MH370. And finally, some progress. These are the two men who were travelling on stolen passports. Both are said to be Iranian. One, a 19-year-old, whom profile checks suggest has no connections with terrorism. It's now believed he was trying to claim asylum in Europe.
We are in contact with his mother. Okay? His mother is expecting him to arrive in Frankfurt. When he doesn't arrive, he contacted us here. And then that's why we knew that he's the one.
It's served to focus the Malay lines of inquiry.
We are looking into 4 areas. 1 is hijacking. 2, sabotage. 3, psychological problem of the passengers and crew, and 4 personal problems among the passengers and crew.
Interpol later named the 2 men as Puri Nur Mohammadi and 29-year-old Delavar Syed Mohammad Reza and confirmed they had switched to the stolen passports.
We know that once these 2 individuals arrived in Kuala Lumpur on the 28th of February, they boarded Flight 370 using different identities.
So, 4 days now since flight MH370 disappeared and no trace of the aircraft. Initially, the search area focused on the Gulf of Thailand and the South China Sea around the presumed flight path north of Kuala Lumpur and the surrounding areas. But we know search teams are now looking at the western peninsula of Malaysia to the Straits of Malacca, one of the world's busiest shipping channels. The reason for the change is that the Malaysian military say they tracked the plane there on radar, far from where it last made contact with civilian air traffic control off the country's east coast. One theory, and it is but a theory, is that the plane changed course after Kota Bharu over on the east and took a lower altitude as it tried to turn back to Sabang. But for all the theories, for all the assets in the air and on the seas, no trace of flight MH370 can be found. No black box, no identifiable piece of wreckage, beyond the very human cost for friends and family who, despite days of questions with no answers, still cling on for dear life to the slim chance that their loved ones might still be found safe and sound. Niall Paterson, Sky News.